What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. As you can tell, I am not in my usual location. You guys don't get to see my wonderful kitchen as per usual. But yeah, I'm going to be changing locations for the next couple months, honestly. So this week I'm going to be all here. Next week after that, I'll probably be back home. I'm going to be moving again after that. So you're going to see multiple locations, but it's pointless to you guys. All you're here for is the content. Doesn't really matter what is behind me. In today's video, we're going to be going over, this was suggested last week, that was a really good idea, and I think we're going to do it moving forward, is I'm going to compare my final draft rankings with the current rest of season rankings. And in today's video, what we'll do is go over who's moved up the most. So what players at every position, I'll go each position, and which players have increased when comparing draft rankings to now. So players that I am valuing higher. Not only have they been producing well, some players have had really good weeks, but I haven't necessarily, launched them up my rankings. These are players that have had good weeks and I think are more valuable, and I'll tell you exactly where I do have them ranked right now. If you want to see my exact rankings for every player for rest of season, along with where I have them ranked for that particular week, where I have them projected into your scoring format, you can view that all at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And if you want some extra free content each week, then follow me on TikTok. I'm going to be doing my best to post it every day. I'm far too busy for that to actually end up happening, but I'm going to do my best every day to post one there. I know it's not going to happen again, but I'm going to try. So we'll get things started off as usual right now at the start of the day, and then we'll hop into these rankings changes. Dare has not yet posted the waiver wire video, so I don't actually know what the stat of the day is for yesterday yet, but I'll post that in the comment section below. You'll see it posted on Twitter. But today's stat, just one tight end ranks inside the top 10 in half PPR scoring, even though they haven't scored a touchdown yet. Who is this player? All right, so we're going to start off with quarterbacks and tight ends because not that much has changed for those positions. These are fairly predictable positions. We know for tight end, it's like 3 to, 5 or 6 elite options. And then basically everyone else is just fine. You're just praying they score a touchdown that week. And then for quarterback, we know who the good quarterbacks are. We know who the streaming options are. None of that has really changed, but we'll go over the ones that have moved the most. So the big one that's moved is Gronk. I don't want to say is back because he's not nearly as quick, I guess, as he used to be. He's still a dominant, just freak physically, but he's not outrunning anyone right now. So he's back in the sense of he could score 15 touchdowns this season. These touchdowns are not flukes. He could score 15 this year. It's just not going to come with the yardage. So when he doesn't score, obviously it's going to be done, but you can say that for every single tight end. So I've moved him up, I believe it's 8 spots, up to the tight end 6 rest of season. I think there's a case for him to be made anywhere from 6 to 10, honestly. That whole range, you could move it really however you want. But I would say he's a mid to low end tight end 1 simply because Tom Brady might have the best season of his career. He is going off this season. They're going to be really good. They're going to be scoring 30 points a game. And he's going to be, a big reason as to why they're scoring so many points per game. So Gronk, mid-range tight end 1. Before the season, I had him more as a high-end 2. Noah Fant is only up 4 spots, but that's still one of the biggest movers among tight ends. He's up to the tight end 9. That's just a direct result of the Jerry Jeudy injury. There's really no analysis needed there. When you remove someone like Jeudy, who's going to have in that 7 to 10 might be in the high end, but then 7 to 9 targets per game. When you remove that, obviously that's going to be dispersed amongst the really good players in the team, and Noah Fant is one of those players. So he moves up to the tight end 9, a low-end tight end 1. He's played 77% of the snaps in back-to-back weeks now. He's got 14 targets among these 2 games. So when you combine that with, we knew he was one of the most athletic tight ends in the league, he's really, really valuable right now. Obviously, that value is going to take a small hit when Jeudy comes back. But Jeudy had a high ankle sprain, or has a high ankle sprain, so that's still going to lead to a long time to recover from and a long time to be fully healthy from. So Jeudy being out really, really helps Fant. Hunter Henry up 6 spots to the tight end 14. He saw a snap share increase to 81% this last week. He didn't have a great game. This was the game I actually went to in New York. He didn't have like a great game, but first of all, like the Patriots didn't overall. I mean, they scored 25 points in the game, but that was really just because Wilson was awful, right? And he was throwing picks left and right. They had great field position. The offense itself wasn't doing that great. I really do think that like Mac Jones is playing well, but we're going to see him develop throughout the season. We're going to see him get better. And they're going to have games where they don't, like they actually have to throw it, right? They didn't have to throw the ball on Sunday. They could just play really conservatively and win that game, and that's what they did. They'll have games where they need to be more aggressive, and that's going to benefit Hunter Henry. I still think that Jonnu's more valuable because they're going to use him on screen passes, on end arounds, just getting the ball into his hands quickly, whereas Hunter Henry's used as a more traditional tight end. But regardless, he's a tight end that's going to still have touchdown upside once the Patriots start actually throwing touchdowns. And he's got the physical tools. He's a really good receiving tight end. So I think that he's like a valuable tight end too. I think he's someone that can perform to like that level this season because there is a pretty big drop off once you get outside of the top like 15 tight ends. So I think he kind of just makes the end of that list. The last tight end rise we'll go over is Jared Cook. He's up 8 spots at tight end 15. He's kind of like the end of that. It's kind of like him with like Clement, hopefully, when Fields takes over fully and he starts to be what we think he can be. Clement will have more value, but Jared Cook kind of ends that tier of like the tight ends who are getting a workload, who are good in the receiving game, who have touchdown upside. Cook actually has 13 targets now through the first 2 weeks. He is very clearly playing ahead of Donald Parham, so that was one big thing we wanted to see this season was who's going to be the guy. I was hoping it was Parham. Obviously, like we were never ranking Parham high, but I was hoping we saw to begin the season Parham have a decent role in the offense because he just has more upside than Jared Cook. But Jared Cook, I mean, if he's going to clearly be the one, he's going to get this many targets, and we know he's going to be used in the red zone. Even though he hasn't scored yet, he's going to be used in that area. I think that he's pretty valuable. I'll talk about this offense a little bit more when we get to Mike Williams. But yeah, I mean, it's still a good offense that's going to score points. And so Jared Cook is like a quality tight end too. At quarterback, very little has changed. It's actually less than tight end. Because again, we know who the elite guys are. We know who the streamers are. We know who the scrubs are. That's not changing. It is just simply not changing. The only thing that's going to really change as far as rest of season rankings is when we get full confirmation that Fields is taking over. We do not have that yet. And when Trey Lance takes over. When those two guys take over, that's when they'll launch up rest of season rankings. But until that happens, we're not going to see all that much movement. One big change is Derek Carr. He is up 9 spots to the quarterback, 14 now, so he's like a high end 2. And then Jalen Hurts is up 4 spots to the tight end, or to the quarterback 6. Hopefully I was saying quarterback recently. But yeah, Jalen Hurts up, Derek Carr up. Those are like the really big changes so far. I'm a little disappointed. So if you guys have been following me for at least since the beginning of this year, I was really, really high on Jalen Hurts. I think that he's a really, really good quarterback. I think that his skill set matches up so beautifully with not only this team, but in fantasy, right? He's such a good fantasy quarterback. I'm a little disappointed that when we had these rumors circulating around Watson that I kind of backed off and I dropped him down to the quarterback 10. But I have him up again, like I just said, to the quarterback 6 now. It's a cheat code having a quarterback that can run as well as he can. Because like just look at this last week. He didn't play all that well and the Eagles didn't play all that well, right? Like 190 total passing yards, 0 touchdowns. A quarterback that has that should not do all that well in fantasy. He finishes a quarterback 9 with 22 fantasy points because he had 82 rushing yards and a score on the ground. That's 14.2 fantasy points when you're not even looking at passing. So that gives him a massive weekly floor, an insane ceiling. He's one of very few quarterbacks who have a 40-point ceiling, and that's so important for fantasy because when you have a quarterback that can hit 40, that's where the spikes come from. And that's what can save you in weeks. And that's the problem kind of as we transition into Carr. It's like I've moved Carr up, again, I said, to the quarterback 14, he's been incredible, and I think that I needed to like account for how good he's been. But we need to understand that they're different quarterbacks, right? Like Hurts has such a high floor and a high ceiling. It's like Carr's been hitting his ceiling, 435 passing yards, 382 passing yards in week 2. Even with that, because he doesn't run it, that hurts him, right? Like he's leading the league in passing yards by 128 as of recording this. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. And he's tied for 8th with 4 passing touchdowns. So you look at that and you're like, wow, it's crushing in fantasy, right? It's only 9th in points per game. So he's 1st in passing yards, 8th in touchdowns, 9th in points per game because he doesn't run it. So again, I had to move him up to the quarterback 14 because he's literally averaging over 400 passing yards per game, but he's not going to average over 400 passing yards per game for the full season, and he's not going to run it. That hurts. So I still view him as more of a streaming option, but again, had to move him up because he's playing so well. On to the positions that you guys care about a little bit more. I've got 8 running backs for you to start off. First up, and we're going to go also in order of rest of season rankings. I don't know if you guys could tell for the other 2 positions. That's kind of what I've been doing. We're going to go in order of rest of season rankings. So up 8 spots to my running back 4 is Joe Mixon. I don't want you to freak out about that and be like, 4, like he's ahead of all these studs. Basically, you've got that top 3 kind of locked in. I think that you still have to view McCaffrey 1. I still think you have to view Dalvin Cook 2. I think Derrick Henry right now is 3 after that game. Like, I just think he's 3. And because he has receptions. Like, they're actually using him in the receiving game, which is awesome. Then once you get to like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all those guys are very, very close to each other. I have to rank someone at 4, and I've put Mixon there. But if you were like, I can't believe that he should be at 7, I'm not against that, right? It's anywhere in that like 4 through 7, 8 kind of range. A lot of those guys are very, very similar. But he's the running back 6 right now, and he only has 1 touchdown, and he only has 6 targets. And we know the touchdowns will increase. I'm very confident that the targets will go up as well. And so he's going to be like amongst the league leaders in touches this season. And it's a good offense. Again, I think the touchdowns will be there. And so I think he's extremely valuable in fantasy. So he's like a mid-range running back 1. I've also moved Austin Ekeler up 5 spots to the running back 8. I mentioned last week that I am not concerned or was not concerned at all with the 0 targets. That was a fluke. It wasn't something that was going to continue. He responds 9 receptions on 9 targets and is the running back 7 overall now, despite him only having 1 touchdown as well. He's going to be incredible this season. He is running back 1. James White's up 19 spots to the running back 30. The thing with him is like, he's technically game script dependent, but it's not like the Patriots are going to go out there and like dominate 8 games this season, right? There's going to be very few games. Even if you look at this last week, they like dominated, but for a large portion of that game, they were still using James White. So there's going to be very few games where he's game scripted out and they're like winning by 20 points and they're not using James White. So every week he's going to have some receptions. He's going to mix in the red zone. He's going to have some carries. And so any running back that's getting, production in every area, even if it's just a small amount, and the smallest amount of his production is on the ground, that's the least valuable part of his production. And so I moved him up in the rankings. I think he's relatively valuable. I'm happy at least I have him in 1 of 3 leagues. Singletary, I moved him up 10 spots to running back 31. I didn't want to be overly aggressive on Singletary. Yes, he's been phenomenal in these first 2 weeks. Week 1 didn't have Zach Moss. Moss came back in week 2. And also, Josh Allen, he makes up typically a large percentage of the Bills' offensive touchdowns, and that hasn't been the case so far this season. I mean, we saw last week they ran 3 touchdowns in. That's not going to happen every week. Like, Josh Allen's going to be playing better, and so I'm not fully confident in Devin Singletary, so I didn't want to throw him out there as like a lock and load running back 2. I still think he's more of a flex option, more someone you can rotate into running back 2 or use at running back 2 if you went heavy at other positions early. But I want to mention he is up to the running back 31 rest of season, and he's someone I'm definitely comfortable trading high on. So I want to mention that a few times during this video. Some of these players I've moved up and I don't really want to sell them. Like we'll get to like Cooper Kupp. I don't really want to sell Cooper Kupp. He's just clearly a big part of the offense. He's really good. I want him on my team, right? But someone like Singletary, he's a really good person to flip because you're not relying on him. There's no way you drafted Singletary to rely on him. But if someone else out there is just getting decimated at running back and they have a bunch of busts or injuries or something, and you can trade Singletary for like a quality tight end or like an upgraded quarterback or an upgraded wide receiver, like 2-for-1s are usually the best. Singletary plus a receiver for a stud. Singletary plus your quarterback for a stud. I think that's a smart way of looking at it. Tony Pollard, he is up 12 spots to running back 32. He has looked fantastic this season, and he deserves all of the work that he is taking away from Zeke. There's a lot of times I'm critical of teams for not using a feature back. Not in this case. Tony Pollard is clearly good. He might be better than Ezekiel Elliott. I'm perfectly comfortable with whatever touches they give him. He just looks better than Zeke at this point. We can't go too overboard because they paid Zeke $1 billion and they're clearly going to use him. And despite 16 touches in week 2, you're like, wow, he played a ton. We only played 21 snaps. And that percentage is probably not going to continue moving forward. And if he's only going to play 21 snaps, that obviously caps his upside. So he's the best handcuff in football. He's one of the highest upside like running backs that you can have. It's like him and A.J. Dillon are just up there with upside. I just worry about his floor if he's going to stay at around 35% of the snaps, at the most. I don't even think he's touched 35% this season. I think it was 34%, and then the week before it was even less than that. But again, super, super valuable running back because he is a running back one the moment that Zeke gets hurt. The final 2 running backs have moved up a lot simply because they're really low in the rankings originally. Obviously, like no one was ranking Elijah Mitchell very high. And then Tyson Williams, I didn't have super high. He's moved up 21 spots to running back 38. But both of them are not players I'm like excited about moving forward. I'm probably going to move both of them down a little bit as I kind of look over things this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if both of them are close to the running back 40 range. For Mitchell, his value just depends on the health of his backfield, right? I mean, every single running back on that team was hurt at some point, even Mitchell. They just all got hurt, which is just nuts how unfortunate they've been with injury luck. So we just need to wait and see. I don't know right now what the health is going to be. All I know is that while they're all healthy, the 49ers are not going to feature one running back. And so I did not agree with people who were going out and spending 100% of their fab on Elijah Mitchell last week. I thought that was foolish. I thought 30% was a good high point. I only bid on him in one league and I put 17% in. Other leagues, I was just I don't even want to drop him for the bench options that I have. But you got to look at a backfield. And if Sermon is out and Hasty is out and we know Mostert's out for the season, well, yeah, Mitchell's going to get a ton of touches and going to be very valuable. So just pay attention to that backfield. I think while Hasty, Sermon, and Mitchell are all there, I really think that Mitchell is overrated. But pay attention because you're going to have value if those guys are out. And then just talking about Williams, you guys know my take. I've given it a few times last week. It's the same this week. I think that as this season progresses, as they activate Le'Veon Bell, as they work in Freeman, work in Latavius, and also they could cut one of these guys for sure. They could cut Bell, they could cut Freeman, they could cut Latavius. But I think that as they work these guys in, get them comfortable with the playbook, and really start to form a 3-man committee, you're not going to want Williams. He's just not going to be super valuable, so I'm still trading high on him right now. Wide receivers. Let's go over that next. 9 names. A few guys. A lot of risers there. One is the obvious Michael Thomas. He will rise a few spots every week simply because he'll be 1 week closer to returning, right? So you have one fewer week where he's just wasting a spot on your bench. I moved him up 14 spots to wide receiver 45. And yeah, there's really nothing else to say there. He's going to clearly be the number 1 wide receiver when he returns. We don't yet know where that's going to be, but we're at least 2 weeks into the season, so you're a little bit closer to getting him back. Cooper Kupp, like I mentioned before, up 10 spots to the wide receiver 9. He is the wide receiver 1 overall, not in every format. I want to say that Lockett is the wide receiver 1 overall in standard, but I think in half and full PPR, Cooper Kupp is number 1. Again, I am not selling high on Kupp. It is very clear that this production is not a I'm going to say it's not a fluke. Obviously, he's not going to have 100 yards and a score every single week and go for like, he went nuclear last week. He was what, like 9 or 10 receptions for like, I don't even remember the final stat line, 170, 180 yards, like 2 touchdowns. He's not doing that every week, obviously. But every single week, he's going to be involved. And the scary thing is, they have not peaked yet in terms of pass attempts. They're not throwing the ball that much because they've been winning. What happens in a game where Stafford drops back 45 times? That'll be scary. And the upside that Kupp has is monstrous. I still think Tyler Higbee is a fantastic buy low, and I think it's possible that Robert Woods is a great buy low right now. But Cooper Kupp is not a sell high because he's just gonna be really, really good. Tyler Lockett, another guy up 10 spots, the wide receiver 15. Similar sentiment with Lockett, although I'd be willing to sell high on Lockett. I am not just dumping him because I'm convinced at this point the reports last season that he was injured are true. He was clearly just banged up last season. He's really good. They're invested in him. Wilson's awesome. Like it's a great spot for Lockett. So I'm not just like trying to dump him. But understand that Metcalf is currently the wide receiver 33 and they have the exact same number of targets. So you've got one guy that's the wide receiver 1 in standard, one's wide receiver 33.5 PPR, same exact number of targets. And it's not like, oh, Metcalf, isn't as much of a deep threat as Lockett. Of course he is, right? He's DK Metcalf. He's like the most physically gifted wide receiver in the NFL. And so if their targets remain the same, the production is probably at the end of the season going to be very, very similar. I thought that Metcalf would take a larger share of the targets, but regardless, Lockett is not going to finish this far different. There's not going to be 30 wide receiver spots difference between Lockett and Metcalf if they have the same number of targets. So understand that. I am fine, again, selling high on Lockett, but make sure you're actually getting his value. High-end wide receiver 2. That's what you should be getting in return for Lockett. Deebo Samuel, up 9 spots to the wide receiver 21. I want to move him higher because he's obviously really good. And I think that when Lance takes over, this offense improves. My only concern is one, like Kittle hasn't really gone off yet. And we're definitely going to get weeks where Kittle goes off. And I just think that that's not really baked into his value right now. And then Ayuk clearly took a step forward this week because he did improve his route percentage. He ran the second most routes among the wide receivers. He clearly passed Sherfield or Sheffield. I never know how to say his name. I think it's Sherfield. He's clearly not 100% yet. Maybe that happens in like 2 or 3 weeks. But once like Ayuk is 100% and Kittle actually starts getting targeted more, it's like, does Deebo Samuel have this much of a share of the offense? So I think low end 2 is like a really good spot for him. I don't want to move him up into that like Lockett range because that feels a little bit too aggressive. But I think this is a good spot. And again, a quick note for those of you who are just looking at like the box score and you're like, how did Ayuk take a step forward? One, I mentioned it, the snaps. The snaps went way up. The 49ers, as we talked about last season, the summer, they're a very game script team. So they move into weeks very clearly saying, okay, Deebo is getting these looks, Kittle is getting these looks, the running backs are getting these looks. And so no matter how good the other receivers are, if you're not in the game plan yet, then you're not getting the targets. That's just like how their offense works. They're very, 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 this is our game plan. This is what we're doing. More than a lot of other teams, maybe more than any other team. And so when you have the coach come out and say, yeah, in week 1, like he just wasn't part of the game plan because, literally word for word, because he had the hamstring injury, he missed so much time, we couldn't put him in the game plan, you should believe that. And then when he comes out the next week and he calls out fantasy football managers and being like, hey, like this is a bigger deal than it is because of fantasy football, because people freak out, you just got to take that for what it is. The coach is literally sitting there telling you he's going to be fine, he's going to get the snaps, he's going to take over as the 2. He just hasn't been involved yet because he's working his way back from the injury. He has said that word for word. So please believe the coaches when they say that. That does not mean we're starting Ayuk. I have him in 1 of 3 leagues. He's on my bench. He will stay on my bench until we clearly see he's involved. But please don't think that like Samuel is just this god that every single week is going to be going off and that Kittle is never going to go off and Ayuk is never going to go off and they're never going to move to Trey Lance. Like I just think that there are too many factors that could change the value of Deebo that I think it's really nice having him as a wide receiver 2, like a low end 2. Sutton, same thing with Noah Fant. Sutton is up 12 spots to wide receiver 22, simply because Judy is gone. Those targets have to go to someone. He had a phenomenal week this last week. He had like 1 billion air yards too. I think he had more air yards in week 2 than any receiver had at all last season. So clearly he is valuable. I don't know exactly how long Judy's going to be out, but for whatever time frame that is, Sutton is a must start, right? And even when he returns, Sutton's still like a quality wide receiver. So yeah, he has to move up when Judy is out. I also moved Mike Williams up 17 spots to wide receiver 23. I'm upset at myself over this one. So I was all over Mike Williams. My whole premise was like, I didn't think that Herbert was a great pick this season. I didn't. But I didn't understand how everyone could be all in on Justin Herbert having this like great second season, just being a great quarterback, and no one wanted to draft Mike Williams. It's like, how is Herbert being amazing if Mike Williams stinks? Like, how are those two things related? Especially with the new coaching staff coming in, kind of saying they wanted to use him more in that Michael Thomas role. But then he missed a lot of time at the end of camp, and I got scared, and I moved him back down closer to ADP. I probably should not have done that because he's going off now, so that's unfortunate. I wish I had more of him. But I want you guys to know that this is not a fluke. We thought this was definitely a possibility over the summer. And when you look at his role in the offense, last season, early in his career, he was so boom or bust because all of his targets were deep downfield. It's not happening anymore. His ADOT is much lower. He's got a much more secure target share. And so he's going to continue to be a really, really valuable piece in the offense. And so I'm not selling high on Mike Williams. I don't think people are trading for him for like wide receiver 1 value. So I think you got Mike Williams. Just be excited about that. Brandin Cooks up 16 spots to wide receiver 25. He is the only Houston player that I would own right now. We do need to track Ty God's injury. Obviously, he's already out for the Thursday game. If he's going to miss a lot of time, that of course hurts Brandin Cooks. But regardless, Cooks is far and away the best wide receiver on that team. And as long as Cooks can stay healthy, he is a really, really good flex play. Marquise Brown up 23 spots, I believe, to the wide receiver 31. Yeah, 31. I'm not 100% sure about this offense. Only thing I'm sure of, Hollywood, he has the role that we thought he'd have last year. So we were really excited about Hollywood last year because we thought he's going to clearly be the top target, going to have a downfield role, so he'll have a secure target share, and then he'll have the boom weeks. And then that didn't happen. But now, to end last season, to start this year, his last 10 games, he's averaged almost 5 receptions, over 71 yards, 8 touchdowns in the last 10 games. Now he's got the role. Now, I don't know how it's going to change when Bateman returns, but Bateman is still a rookie. We need to assume that this is the role for Marquise Brown this season, and so he's a very, very good flex play as well. And then finally, Sterling Shepard up 27 spots to the wide receiver 33. I'm upset at myself over this one too. If you remember back to the video I did, I said who is the best value in every single round according to my rankings across from the projections. And if you remember, I talked about Shepard being the best value in the 15th round. But then, like, I have him ranked as the best value. I have him ranked well ahead of ADP, well ahead of ACR, and then I didn't list him as a core pick. I really wish I had listed him as a core pick because a lot more of you would have drafted him. I'm hoping that you guys just saw that he was well ahead of everything, and so you should be drafting players when that's the case. But I apologize for not listing him as a core pick. But yeah, he's very talented. We knew that at some point he was going to break out in his career. It just hadn't really happened yet. Clearly having that breakout this season. His upside's only so high because he's on a terrible team, not a fantastic quarterback, and a lot of weapons around him, but still going to be a valuable piece. I'm not really trying to sell him because I don't think anyone's buying Sterling Shepard for like a really expensive price tag, but I think he's a really, really quality play now. So I know that was a long one, but these are the players who have moved up the most in the rest of season rankings. Next week, I'm probably going to take a look at who has moved down the most, and then we'll probably just rotate every single week. Like 1 week we'll do who's rising, 1 week we'll do who is falling. I don't think we can do 2 every week because we have waiver wire, we have trade targets, we've got start sits. But I do think it would be a really, really good idea to just rotate through the risers and the fallers every single Tuesday. As always, if you want to see the rest of the season rankings, you want to see my weekly rankings, everything else that we offer on the website, you can see that thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And remember, if you want some extra free content, I'm trying to post on TikTok every day. It's not going to happen, but I'm going to do my best to post on there as much as I can. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, and how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.